A man's past just walked through his front door, and his picture-perfect life will never be the same. She wasn't rich. She wasn't powerful. She didn't come wearing diamonds or silk. But she raised him, protected him, held his hand through hunger, heartbreak, and hardship. She gave him everything when he had absolutely nothing. Now, decades later, standing in the marble foyer of his $12 million mansion, the woman who built his character is being treated like a stranger, like a servant, because his wife, the one who married the fortune, not the man, just asked her if she came through the service entrance. In front of guests, in his home, on the eve of the party meant to celebrate his success. But what no one expected was what Robert Caldwell would do next. Because sometimes, one moment, one insult, is all it takes to remind a man of who he used to be, and who he was never supposed to forget. And what happens next will shatter illusions, shake a marriage, and rewrite a legacy. Before we go any further, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below with your city or country. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button to join our community of storytellers dedicated to Black voices and experiences. Now back to our story. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Caldwell estate, illuminating the marble countertops of a kitchen larger than most apartments. Robert Caldwell stood by the window, coffee in hand, gazing out at the manicured garden of his $12 million mansion in the exclusive Hilltop Estates neighborhood. At 39, he was just days away from his milestone 40th birthday, and from the outside, he had everything a man could want: success, wealth, and status. But something was missing. "Darling, don't forget we have the charity gala tonight," called Vanessa, his wife of 5 years, as she strutted into the kitchen in designer loungewear, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. "The Andersons and Whitmores will be at our table." Patricia said Senator Collins might make an appearance. Robert nodded absently. "I remember. Are you even listening? This is important for your image. The right connections at this gala could mean millions for your next venture round." Vanessa pressed, her manicured nails tapping impatiently on the marble. "Not everything is about business connections, Vanessa," Robert replied softly. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Says the man who built a $500 million tech company from nothing. Don't pretend you didn't get where you are by knowing the right people." What Vanessa didn't understand, what she had never understood, was that Robert's success wasn't built on elite connections. His story began in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the south side of the city, where his single mother worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. As a child, Robert spent more time with his nanny than with his own mother. Ms. Gloria Johnson, a kind-hearted Black woman in her 40s, had been more than just childcare. She had been his teacher, his confidant, and in many ways, his moral compass. "You keep your heart good, little man," she would tell him, her warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "All this studying and working hard means nothing if you don't keep your heart good." Those words had stayed with him through MIT, through his first failed startup, through the sleepless nights building his software company, and through the dizzying ascent to wealth that followed. But somewhere along the way, perhaps around the time he'd met Vanessa at a Silicon Valley fundraiser, he'd started to lose sight of Ms. Gloria's wisdom. "I've laid out your Navy Tom Ford for tonight," Vanessa continued, scrolling through her phone. "The photographer from Vanity Fair will be there, and navy screens better than black." Robert set down his coffee cup. "I have a board meeting this morning. I should get going." "Fine," Vanessa said without looking up. "Oh, and Isabella called about your birthday party. The ice sculpture of your company logo is confirmed, and the chef from that Michelin restaurant is doing the tasting menu." "An ice sculpture? Really, Vanessa?" Robert sighed. "I told you I wanted something simpler." "Simpler?" she scoffed. "Robert, you're one of the youngest tech billionaires in the country. Your birthday should reflect your status. What would people think if we served hot dogs and paper plates?" Robert didn't answer as he grabbed his keys and headed for the garage where his collection of luxury cars awaited. As he drove his sleek black Tesla through the wrought iron gates of his estate, his mind drifted back to birthdays long ago, simple celebrations with homemade cake that Ms. Gloria would prepare, making sure there was one candle for good luck even in the years when money was too tight for presents. Later that afternoon, as Robert sat in his corner office overlooking the city skyline, his assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Caldwell, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's personal." "A Miss Johnson?" Robert froze, his heart suddenly racing. "Gloria Johnson?" "Yes, sir." "Should I tell her you're busy?" "No," Robert said, standing up so quickly he knocked over his chair. "No, please send her in right away." When Ms. Gloria walked through his office door, Robert felt like a child again. She was older now, her hair more gray than black, lines etched deeper around her kind eyes. But her smile was exactly as he remembered. "Ms. Gloria," he breathed, rushing around his desk. "Look at you, little man," she said, her voice thick with emotion as Robert embraced her. "Though I guess I can't call you that anymore. You can call me whatever you want." Robert laughed, wiping unexpected tears from his eyes. "How did you find me?" "Find you? Child, your face is on the cover of those business magazines at the grocery store. But we reconnected through that Facebook thing. Your mother's old friend Denise showed me how to use it, and then I saw you had one of those pages. I sent you a message last week." Robert looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Ms. Gloria. My social media is managed by my PR team. I rarely check personal messages." "No matter. I'm here now. I was in town visiting my niece and thought I'd take a chance." She glanced around his opulent office. "You've done real well for yourself." "Only because of you and Mom," Robert said sincerely. "Everything I learned about working hard and doing right, I learned from you too." Ms. Gloria waved away the compliment. "Your mama did the hard part. I just made sure you didn't burn the house down while she was working." They spent the next hour catching up. Robert learned that Ms. Gloria had continued nannying for several families after his mother was finally able to afford their own place and no longer needed her help. She'd retired 5 years ago when her arthritis made the physical demands of childcare too difficult. She now lived in a small apartment across town, getting by on her modest savings and Social Security. "You have to come to dinner tonight," Robert insisted. "I want you to see my home, meet my wife." Ms. Gloria hesitated. "I don't want to impose on your fancy life, Robert." "Impose?" "Ms. Gloria, your family. Please, it would mean the world to me." She finally agreed, and Robert sent his driver to pick her up that evening while he headed home early to tell Vanessa about their special guest. "You invited who to dinner?" Vanessa's voice was sharp as she applied her makeup in her massive walk-in closet. "My childhood nanny," Robert repeated. "Ms. Gloria. She helped raise me." Vanessa turned to face him, her expression incredulous. "And she just showed up at your office out of the blue?" "Robert, don't you think that's a bit suspicious? She probably heard about your success and wants a handout." Robert felt a flash of anger. "That's not who she is, Vanessa. She's the most selfless person I've ever known." "Everyone is selfless until millions of dollars are involved," Vanessa muttered, turning back to her mirror. "Besides, we're supposed to be getting ready for the gala. We can be a little late. This is important to me." Vanessa sighed dramatically. "Fine, but don't expect me to cancel our plans entirely for some nanny." When the doorbell rang an hour later, Robert rushed to answer it himself, ignoring the surprised look from their housekeeper who normally handled the door. Ms. Gloria stood on the doorstep wearing a simple blue dress and cardigan, clutching a small purse, her eyes wide as she took in the grandeur of the mansion. "Ms. Gloria, welcome to my home," Robert said warmly, ushering her inside. "Goodness gracious," she breathed, looking up at the soaring ceilings and grand staircase. "Little man, this place is bigger than the whole apartment building we lived in." Robert laughed. "I know, it's a bit much, isn't it? Come on in. Let me introduce you to Vanessa." He led Ms. Gloria into the formal living room where Vanessa was perched on an expensive white sofa, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she assessed their visitor. "Vanessa, this is Ms. Gloria Johnson, who I told you about." "Ms. Gloria, my wife, Vanessa. How nice to meet you," Vanessa said, her tone suggesting it was anything but nice. She remained seated, forcing Ms. Gloria to approach her. "I understand you used to work for Robert's family." "I helped look after Robert while his mama worked," Ms. Gloria corrected gently. She was doing her best on her own. "How charitable of you," Vanessa replied with a thin smile. Her eyes flickered to Miss Gloria's worn purse and simple clothes. Did you come through the main entrance? Usually service providers use the side door. Robert stiffened. Vanessa, Miss Gloria is our guest, not staff. Vanessa waved a dismissive hand. Of course, I just meant for future reference. She checked her diamond-encrusted watch. Shouldn't we be heading to the gala soon, Robert? We have time for dinner first, Robert insisted. I've asked Mrs. Parker to set an extra place. We're eating here. Vanessa's voice rose slightly. But the reservation at Loose Cirque. I called and canceled. I thought a home-cooked meal would be nicer for catching up. As they moved to the dining room, Vanessa whispered harshly to Robert, "We have staff watching us. What will they think seeing you fawn over some old black nanny like she's royalty?" "I don't care what anyone thinks," Robert whispered back. "And don't talk about her like that." The grand dining table was set for 3, though it could easily seat 20. Mrs. Parker, their private chef, had prepared a delicious meal of roast chicken, potatoes, and vegetables. Ms. Gloria exclaimed over the food, complimenting the chef warmly when she came out to check on them. "This is wonderful," Ms. Gloria said to Mrs. Parker. "Reminds me of Sunday dinners back home in Georgia." "You're from Georgia?" "So am I," Mrs. Parker replied with genuine interest. "Which part?" "Ladies, the food will get cold," Vanessa interrupted. "Mrs. Parker, we're fine now, thank you." The chef nodded professionally and retreated to the kitchen. Throughout dinner, Vanessa's behavior grew increasingly uncomfortable. She spoke over Ms. Gloria, corrected her grammar, and made pointed comments about different upbringings and proper table etiquette. When Ms. Gloria mentioned her small apartment, Vanessa asked if it was in one of those government housing projects. "Actually, I own my place," Ms. Gloria said with dignity. "Small as it is, it's all mine. Paid off the mortgage 5 years ago." "How quaint," Vanessa replied, sipping her wine. "Robert, you never told me your nanny was such a financial success story." Robert's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, their butler appeared. "Madam, the car is ready whenever you wish to depart for the gala." "Thank you, James," Vanessa said, standing immediately. "Well, this has been interesting, but we really must be going. Robert, shall we?" Robert looked torn between his wife and Ms. Gloria. "You go on ahead," Ms. Gloria said kindly, seeing his dilemma. "I should be getting home anyway. It's been a long day." "I'll have my driver take you," Robert insisted. "Nonsense," Vanessa cut in. "We can call her a taxi. Your driver is taking us to the gala." Robert's face darkened. "Vanessa, it's not a problem too." "Really, a taxi is fine," Ms. Gloria interjected, clearly uncomfortable with the tension. "I take them all the time." "At least let me walk you out," Robert said, shooting an angry glance at his wife. At the front door, Robert apologized. "I'm sorry about Vanessa. She can be difficult with new people." Ms. Gloria patted his arm. "Don't you worry about me, little man. I've dealt with plenty of Vanessas in my lifetime. I want to see you again before you leave town. And I want to help you, Miss Gloria. You did so much for me." "I didn't do anything expecting payback," she interrupted firmly. "I know that. But please, let me at least take you to lunch tomorrow." Ms. Gloria agreed, and Robert watched as her taxi disappeared down his long driveway. When he returned inside, Vanessa was waiting in the foyer, an irritated expression on her face. "Finally, now can we please go to the event we've been planning to attend for weeks?" "What was that about, Vanessa?" Robert demanded, ignoring her question. What about?" "The way you treated Miss Gloria. The service entrance comment? Suggesting she lives in the projects?" Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. I was perfectly civil." "Civil? You were condescending and rude to someone who means a great deal to me. She was your nanny, Robert. An employee. You're acting like she's family." "She is family," Robert insisted. "More than some of my actual relatives. She was there for me when no one else was." "Well, she's not here now, is she?" "I am. And we have important people waiting for us at that gala." Vanessa grabbed her clutch purse. "Now, are you coming or not?" Robert stared at his wife for a long moment, seeing her in a new and troubling light. Without another word, he followed her to the waiting car, his mind churning with memories of Ms. Gloria's kindness contrasted with his wife's casual cruelty. As they drove toward the glittering lights of the city, Robert realized that the thing he'd felt was missing earlier that morning finally had a name: authenticity. And he was suddenly very aware of how little of it existed in the life he'd built. The following day, Robert canceled his morning meetings to have lunch with Ms. Gloria. He picked her up from his niece's modest home in his least flashy car, a decision made consciously after seeing how uncomfortable she'd been with the obvious displays of wealth at his mansion. "I thought we'd go to Carson's Diner," Robert suggested as Ms. Gloria settled into the passenger seat. "Remember how you used to take me there on Saturdays when Mom worked overtime?" Ms. Gloria's face lit up. "They still have that place?" "Lord, we haven't been there in 20 years. The same family still owns it," Robert said with a smile. "And they still make those blueberry pancakes you love." When they arrived at the small, no-frills diner in the working-class neighborhood where Robert had grown up, several heads turned to stare at the luxury car parked outside. Inside, however, Robert was just another customer, albeit one in an expensive suit. As they slid into a worn vinyl booth, memories flooded back for both of them. "You always ordered chocolate milk and asked for extra whipped cream," Ms. Gloria recalled, smiling. "And you always pretended not to notice when I stole bacon from your plate," Robert laughed. The elderly waitress approached, her eyes widening as she looked at them. "Gloria Johnson? And little Robert Caldwell? Is that really you two?" "Betty," Ms. Gloria exclaimed, standing to hug the waitress. "You're still working here after all these years?" "Own the place now," Betty said proudly. "My daddy passed it to me when he retired. But look at you two. I heard you made it big, Robert. Your mama would be so proud." Robert smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. "I hope so. She didn't get to see much of it before she passed." "Oh, she sees it," Betty assured him. "And I bet she's up there bragging about her boy to anyone who'll listen." After they ordered, Robert and Ms. Gloria fell into easy conversation. She told him about her 3 grandnieces she was helping to put through college, and how her small pension barely covered her medication for arthritis. "I'm not complaining," she added quickly. "I've been blessed with good people around me. My church helps out when times get tight." Robert felt a twinge of guilt. Here was the woman who had shaped his character, struggling to afford medicine while he lived in a mansion. "Ms. Gloria, I want to help you," he said seriously. "Please let me." She shook her head firmly. "Now, you listen here, Robert Caldwell. I didn't come looking for you to ask for money. I know that. But I have more than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Let me help the person who helped me when we had nothing." Their conversation was interrupted when Robert's phone rang. It was Vanessa. "Where are you?" she demanded without preamble. "Your assistant said you canceled all your meetings today. We have the tasting for your birthday menu in an hour." "I'm having lunch with Ms. Gloria," Robert replied, not bothering to hide his irritation at her tone. There was a pause. "You're still with the nanny?" "Robert, you have responsibilities. This is getting ridiculous." "I'll be there when I can," he said firmly. "Start without me if needed." He hung up to find Ms. Gloria watching him with knowing eyes. "Trouble in paradise?" she asked gently. Robert sighed. "Vanessa and I, we have different values." "I noticed," Ms. Gloria said diplomatically. "She wasn't always like this," Robert found himself explaining. "Or maybe she was and I didn't see it. When we met, her confidence attracted me. She knew what she wanted and how to get it, something I admired after years of struggling for every opportunity." "There's nothing wrong with confidence," Ms. Gloria agreed. "But there's everything wrong with thinking you're better than others because of what you have instead of who you are." Her words struck Robert deeply. They continued talking through lunch, and by the time they finished, Robert had convinced Ms. Gloria to attend his birthday party that weekend. "Just for a little while," she conceded. "Though I don't have anything fancy enough to wear to a millionaire's party." "You could wear a paper bag and you'd still be the most important guest there," Robert assured her. After dropping Ms. Gloria off, Robert headed home to find Vanessa fuming in the kitchen with the event planner and caterer. "Finally," she snapped when he walked in. "We've been waiting for over an hour." "I said to start without me," Robert replied calmly. "Mr. Caldwell," the caterer began nervously, "we need your approval on the final menu." Mrs. Caldwell wanted caviar for the appetizer, but mentioned you preferred something less conventional. "My husband will have whatever I've selected," Vanessa cut in. He's been too busy with other matters to concern himself with these details. The way she said other matters made Robert's jaw clench, but he kept his composure. Actually, he said to the caterer, I'd like to add some comfort food to the menu. Fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens, the kind of food I grew up on. The caterer looked uncertainly between husband and wife. Soul food? At a formal birthday gala. Vanessa looked mortified. Robert, what would the Whitmores think? Or the Richardsons? I don't care what they think. It's my birthday, and I want food that means something to me. Is this because of her? Vanessa demanded after the caterer and event planner had awkwardly excused themselves. You spend one day with your old nanny, and suddenly you want to serve ghetto food at a black tie event? Robert stared at his wife, stunned by her words. What did you just say? You heard me. This woman shows up out of nowhere, and suddenly you're canceling meetings, missing appointments, and trying to turn your sophisticated birthday celebration into some kind of, I don't know, soul food restaurant opening. That ghetto food, as you call it, is what sustained me when my mother could barely pay rent, Robert said, his voice dangerously quiet. And Ms. Gloria is the woman who made sure I had a hot meal every night, who helped me with homework, who taught me to look people in the eye and treat them with respect regardless of their station in life. A lesson you clearly never learned. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Oh, spare me the rags to riches story. We've all heard it. It's very inspirational, makes for great magazine profiles. But you're not that person anymore, Robert. You're one of the elite now. Start acting like it. If being elite means being ashamed of where I came from or the people who helped me get here, then I don't want any part of it. The argument ended in a stalemate, with Vanessa storming off to her yoga class and Robert retreating to his home office. As he sat at his desk, he found himself opening a drawer he rarely accessed. Inside was a small wooden box. He lifted the lid to reveal a collection of childhood mementos. His mother's worn wedding ring, his first paycheck, and a handmade birthday card from Ms. Gloria when he turned 10. The card, made of construction paper with slightly crooked lettering, read, To my little man Robert. Always remember that a good heart is worth more than gold. Love, Ms. Gloria. Robert sat back in his chair, the card in his hands, and made a decision. The day before his birthday party, Robert held a small gathering at his home for close friends and business associates. It was meant to be an intimate prelude to the grand celebration planned for the following evening. Despite his reservations, he had allowed Vanessa to continue with her elaborate plans, but he had insisted that Ms. Gloria be treated as a guest of honor. She'll be seated at the main table with us, he informed Vanessa that morning. Next to the Andersons? Robert, be reasonable. She won't know how to act in that setting. It will be uncomfortable for everyone. The only one who seems uncomfortable is you, Robert observed. And I've made my decision. When guests began arriving that evening, Robert made sure to personally greet each one at the door. Among the first to arrive were his college roommate Marcus and his wife Diana, two of the few people from his pre-wealth days who remained close friends. Happy almost birthday, man. Marcus embraced him warmly. The big 4-0. How's it feel to be over the hill? Like I'm just getting started, Robert replied with a grin. When Ms. Gloria arrived, wearing a modest but elegant blue dress that Robert suspected she had purchased specially for the occasion, he introduced her to Marcus and Diana with pride. This is Ms. Gloria Johnson, the woman who helped raise me. She's the reason I'm standing here today. It's an honor to meet you, Marcus said sincerely, shaking her hand. Robert's told us so much about you over the years. All good things, I hope, Ms. Gloria chuckled. Only the best, Diana assured her. He credits you with teaching him his work ethic. Ms. Gloria beamed. I just reminded him of what his mama taught him. Vanessa appeared at Robert's side, her smile fixed and tight. Darling, the Whitmores just arrived. You should greet them. She barely acknowledged Ms. Gloria with a nod before steering Robert away. Throughout the evening, Vanessa made it a point to keep Robert busy with other guests, effectively isolating Ms. Gloria. But Robert noticed and made repeated efforts to include her in conversations, introducing her to his business partners and friends with the same respect he showed to the wealthiest investors in the room. During a lull in the festivities, Robert found Ms. Gloria sitting alone in a corner of the grand living room, watching the crowd of expensively dressed people with a thoughtful expression. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked, taking a seat beside her. "It's quite a shindig," she replied diplomatically. "Everyone's been real nice." "But," Robert prompted, sensing her reservation. Ms. Gloria sighed. "It's just not you, Robert. All this." She gestured around at the extravagance. "The little boy I knew wanted to make video games and eat pizza every day. He didn't care about crystal champagne flutes and caviar." Robert smiled ruefully. "That little boy is still in here somewhere. I think he just got lost along the way." "Well, I'm glad to see him finding his way back." Miss Gloria patted his hand. Their moment was interrupted when Vanessa approached with an older couple. "Robert, the Hendersons want to discuss the yacht club membership," she said, pointedly ignoring Miss Gloria. "Harold, Margaret, have you met Miss Gloria?" Robert deliberately introduced her. "She's one of my oldest and dearest friends." Harold Henderson, a ruddy-faced man in his 60s, gave Miss Gloria a cursory glance. "Charmed, I'm sure. Now, about that membership, Robert." "Actually, Miss Gloria was just telling me about her grandnieces," Robert continued smoothly. "Three brilliant young women in college. One's studying pre-med at Howard." The Hendersons shifted uncomfortably, clearly annoyed at being forced to acknowledge Miss Gloria. "How nice," Margaret Henderson said with a tight smile. "Vanessa, perhaps you could show me that new art piece you mentioned? The one from the gallery in Milan." As they walked away, Vanessa shot Robert an angry look. The evening continued in this vein, with Robert deliberately including Ms. Gloria while Vanessa and some of their more status-conscious friends attempted to sideline her. The tension built steadily, like a pot slowly coming to boil. The breaking point came during the dessert service. Robert was across the room, deep in conversation with a tech investor, when he heard Vanessa's voice rise above the gentle murmur of conversation. "Actually, why don't you help the staff with the coffee service? You'd probably be more comfortable in the kitchen anyway." Robert turned to see Vanessa speaking to Ms. Gloria, who stood perfectly still, her expression composed, but her eyes flashing with hurt and anger. "I'm not staff, Mrs. Caldwell," Ms. Gloria replied quietly. "I'm a guest in your home." "Oh, don't be so sensitive." Vanessa laughed, a brittle sound with no warmth. "I simply thought you'd prefer to be useful rather than standing around pretending to understand our conversations about the stock market and European villas." Several nearby guests had fallen silent, watching the exchange with uncomfortable expressions. Robert started moving across the room, his heart pounding. "I understand plenty," Ms. Gloria said with dignity. "I understand that money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy class or character." Vanessa's face flushed with anger. "How dare you speak to me that way in my own home? Do you know who I am?" "I know exactly who you are," Miss Gloria replied evenly. "The question is, do you know who your husband is? Because the Robert Caldwell I helped raise would never have married someone who treats people the way you do." By now, Robert had reached them, along with Marcus, who moved protectively to Miss Gloria's side. "What's going on here?" Robert demanded, though he had heard enough to know. "Your hired help is being insubordinate," Vanessa snapped. "Honestly, Robert, I've tried to be accommodating with your little walk down memory lane, but this is too much. This woman doesn't belong here, and you know it." The room had gone completely silent now, all eyes on the unfolding drama. "Hired help," Robert repeated, his voice quiet but intense. "Ms. Gloria is my guest, Vanessa. My honored guest." "Oh, please," Vanessa scoffed. "She was the help then, and she's the help now. Just because you're having some sort of midlife crisis and feeling nostalgic about your humble beginnings doesn't change who she is, or what she is." The naked prejudice in Vanessa's tone made several guests gasp. Marcus put a supportive hand on Ms. Gloria's shoulder. "And what exactly is she, Vanessa?" Robert's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. Vanessa looked around, suddenly aware of the audience, but too far gone in her anger to back down. "She's the help, Robert. Just some black nanny you're romanticizing because you feel guilty about your success. It's pathetic, really." Robert stood very still, his face hardening into a mask of cold fury. When he spoke, his voice was unnervingly calm. "Ms. Gloria, I apologize for my wife's behavior. Would you allow Marcus and Diana to drive you home? I need to have a private conversation with Vanessa." "Of course, little man," Miss Gloria said softly, her dignity intact despite the humiliation she'd endured. "You take care of what needs taken care of." As Marcus and Diana escorted Ms. Gloria out, with several other guests making their excuses to leave as well, Robert turned to the remaining crowd. "I apologize for the disruption. I think it's best if we end the evening early." Within 20 minutes, the house was empty except for Robert and Vanessa, who stood in the vast living room like combatants preparing for battle. "I don't appreciate being humiliated in front of our friends," Vanessa began, her arms crossed defensively. "Humiliated?" Robert echoed in disbelief. "You just revealed yourself as a prejudiced, elitist snob to everyone we know, and you're worried about being humiliated? Don't be so dramatic. I simply pointed out the obvious. She worked for your family. She was the help. She was more than that, and you know it. But even if she had only been the help, as you keep saying, she would still deserve basic human respect, something you seem incapable of showing to anyone you consider beneath you." Vanessa threw up her hands. "So I'm the villain because I don't want some random old woman from your past invading our life and changing you? You've been different ever since she showed up, questioning everything, challenging our plans. This isn't you, Robert." "Maybe it's exactly who I should be," Robert countered. "Someone who remembers where he came from. Someone who values the people who helped him succeed, instead of stepping on them to climb higher." Vanessa's expression hardened. "You need to decide what matters more to you, Robert. Your life with me, the life we've built together, or some misplaced loyalty to an old woman who's clearly trying to manipulate you for money." "She hasn't asked me for a penny," Robert said coldly. "Unlike the so-called friends you surround us with, who are constantly angling for investments or connections." "Enough," Vanessa shouted, her composure finally breaking. "I've had it with this sanctimonious attitude. If you want to throw away everything for some black nanny who probably sees you as her retirement plan, that's your choice. But I won't be part of it." She stepped closer, her voice lowering to a venomous hiss. "It's either her or me, Robert. You decide." Robert looked at his wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. How had he never noticed the coldness in her eyes, the cruel set of her mouth when she spoke of those she deemed unworthy? "You've made this very easy," he said quietly. "Thank you for that, at least." Vanessa's eyes widened as she realized what his words meant. "You can't be serious. You would choose her over your own wife." "I'm choosing the values she taught me over the poison you represent," Robert replied. "And I should have done it the moment you suggested she use the service entrance." "You'll regret this," Vanessa threatened, her face contorted with fury. "When she's bled you dry and moved on, you'll see I was right." Robert shook his head sadly. "The only thing I regret is how long it took me to see you for who you really are. Now, you can stay in the guest room tonight, but tomorrow, I want you gone." As he turned to walk away, Vanessa called after him. "This isn't over, Robert. You have a legal obligation to me." Robert paused at the doorway. "We have a prenup, Vanessa. One with a morality clause that your behavior tonight violated in front of 24 witnesses. But don't worry, I'm not as heartless as you. You'll get what you're legally entitled to, nothing more and nothing less." With that, he left her standing alone in the cavernous room, surrounded by the trappings of wealth that had become her only true love. That night, as Robert lay awake in his bedroom, he realized that for the first time in years, he felt something like peace. Tomorrow would bring complications, lawyers, and the fallout from his decision, but it would also bring clarity. Miss Gloria had given him something far more valuable than childhood care. She had given him a moral compass that, though temporarily misplaced, had finally pointed him back toward his true north. The morning after the disastrous gathering, Robert awoke to find Vanessa already gone from the guest room, along with several suitcases of her designer clothes and jewelry. A coldly formal text message informed him that she would be staying at the Four Seasons downtown and that her lawyer would be in touch. Robert felt a strange sense of lightness as he made himself a simple breakfast, something he rarely did in a house with a full-time chef. As he sipped his coffee, he called Marcus. "How's Miss Gloria?" he asked immediately when his friend answered. Shaken, but strong, Marcus replied. "That woman has more dignity in her little finger than Vanessa has in her entire body. Diana and I took her out for dinner after we left your place. Thank you for being there for her," Robert said sincerely. "And for her. No thanks needed. It was the right thing to do." Marcus paused. "So what happens now?" "Now I fix what's broken," Robert said with quiet determination. "Starting with making things right for Ms. Gloria." After hanging up, Robert made another call, this one to his attorney, Howard Klein. "I need to make some changes to my estate planning," Robert explained. "And I want to discuss the implications of my prenuptial agreement with Vanessa. I assume this has something to do with the scene my wife heard about from the Andersons." Howard asked carefully. His wife had been among the guests the previous night. "Word travels fast," Robert remarked without surprise. "In these circles? At the speed of light." Howard's tone turned serious. "Look, Robert, are you sure about this? Divorce is messy, even with a solid prenup." "I've never been more certain of anything," Robert assured him. "And I need this handled quickly and quietly. My birthday gala is tomorrow night." "You're still having the party?" Howard sounded surprised. "Oh yes," Robert confirmed. "But it's going to be very different from what was planned." Over the next 24 hours, Robert was a whirlwind of activity. He met with his financial advisors, his real estate attorney, and the board of his charitable foundation. He made phone calls to business associates and old friends. He even visited the local community center where Ms. Gloria volunteered, speaking with the director at length about their programs and needs. Throughout it all, Robert's phone buzzed constantly with messages from Vanessa, alternating between threats and tearful pleas, between promises to change and accusations of betrayal. He read them all but responded to none. His decision was made. That afternoon, Robert visited the small cemetery where his mother was buried. He hadn't been there in months, something that now filled him with shame. "I got lost for a while, Mom," he said softly, placing fresh flowers on her simple headstone. "But Miss Gloria helped me find my way back, just like she always did when we were finding our way together." He stood in silence for a long moment, the gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the oak tree that shaded his mother's grave. "I think you'd be proud of what I'm about to do," he continued. "Not the success or the money. Those were never what mattered to you. But standing up for what's right, remembering where I came from, those were your lessons. Those and the ones Miss Gloria reinforced every day." As Robert drove away from the cemetery, he made one last call to Miss Gloria herself. "I'd like to take you to lunch again," he said when she answered. "There's something important I need to discuss with you." They met at a small restaurant near her niece's home, away from the upscale areas where Robert might be recognized. Miss Gloria looked tired but composed, her silver-threaded hair neatly styled, her simple dress pressed. "How are you holding up?" Robert asked after they were seated. "I should be asking you that question," Miss Gloria replied, studying his face. "You look like you haven't slept." "I've been busy," he admitted, "making some long-overdue changes." "Robert," Miss Gloria began, her expression serious, "I never meant to come between you and your wife. That wasn't why I looked you up." "I know that," he assured her. "And you didn't come between us. You just helped me see what was already there, or what wasn't there. The values I thought we shared." He took a deep breath. "But that's not why I asked you to lunch. I have something to tell you, and something to ask you." Miss Gloria looked concerned. "What is it, little man?" "First, I want you to know that Vanessa and I are separating. My lawyer is already handling the details." Miss Gloria's eyes widened. "Because of what happened?" "Robert, you don't have to." "It's not just because of that night," Robert interrupted gently. "It's because of who she is, and who I realized I don't want to be anymore. It was a long time coming." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "And that brings me to what I wanted to ask you. You once did something extraordinary for my mother and me, something I only learned about recently." Miss Gloria looked confused. "Marcus told me last night," Robert continued, "about how when my mother needed surgery that year I was 11, and our insurance wouldn't cover it all, you gave her your savings. Money you'd been putting aside for years to buy a house of your own. Miss Gloria looked down at her hands. That was between your mama and me. She wasn't supposed to tell anyone. She never did, Robert said softly. But before she died, she told Marcus, made him promise to remind me someday what real sacrifice looks like. He thought after what happened last night, it was time I knew. It wasn't a sacrifice, Miss Gloria insisted. It was what family does for each other. Your mama would have done the same for me. I know she would have, Robert agreed. And that's what I want to do now, what family does for each other. He slid the envelope across the table. This isn't charity, and it's not payment for the past. It's what should have been yours long ago, if the world was fair, which we both know it isn't. Miss Gloria hesitated before opening the envelope. Inside was a deed to Robert's mansion in Hilltop Estates. I don't understand, she said, looking up in shock. I'm signing the house over to you, Robert explained, along with a trust to pay for its upkeep, property taxes, and staff if you want them. I've already bought a smaller place downtown for myself. Miss Gloria stared at him in disbelief. Robert, I can't accept this. It's too much. I wouldn't even know what to do with a house that size. You can do whatever you want with it, Robert said sincerely. Live in it, sell it, and buy 10 smaller places. Turn it into a community center or a home for aging caregivers. It's yours, free and clear. When Ms. Gloria began to protest again, Robert held up his hand. There's more, he continued. I'm establishing a foundation in your name, the Gloria Johnson Foundation for Caregivers. It will provide education grants and housing assistance to domestic workers, especially those raising children not their own. Tears filled Ms. Gloria's eyes. Robert, why are you doing this? Because you once sacrificed your dream to save my mother's life. And because I want your legacy to be more than the loving care you gave to one little boy. I want it to help change the lives of people who do the most important work in the world, raising children, caring for families, but get the least recognition and compensation for it. Miss Gloria was openly crying now, her hands trembling as she held the deed. Will you accept it? Robert asked gently. Not for yourself, but for all the women like you who deserve so much more than they receive. After a long moment, Miss Gloria nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Good, Robert said with a smile. Because there's one more thing. My birthday gala is tonight, and I want you there as my guest of honor. And before you say anything, yes, Vanessa knows, and no, she won't be attending. Miss Gloria wiped her eyes. You planned all this in one day? When you know what's right, why wait? Robert replied simply. Besides, I have very efficient lawyers and a lot of resources at my disposal. It turns out money is good for something after all, when it's used the right way. That evening, the grand ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel was transformed for Robert Caldwell's 40th birthday celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables adorned with elegant floral arrangements. A jazz quartet played softly in the corner. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The guest list had changed dramatically from Vanessa's original plan. While some of Robert's business associates remained, he had added dozens of new names, staff from his company at all levels, childhood friends he'd lost touch with, people from Ms. Gloria's church, and even some of the staff from his own home who had never before been treated as guests. As people mingled, there was a noticeable buzz in the room. News of the previous night's confrontation and Vanessa's abrupt departure from the Caldwell mansion had spread like wildfire through their social circle. Speculation ran rampant, with many guests openly wondering if Vanessa would make a dramatic appearance. Robert arrived with Miss Gloria on his arm, she in a beautiful new dress of deep purple that complemented her silver hair, he in a simple but elegant dark suit. A hush fell over the crowd as they entered, followed by warm applause led by Marcus and Diana. Thank you all for coming, Robert said, addressing the room with a genuine smile. Tonight is about celebrating, not just a birthday, but the journey that brought me here and the people who made it possible. He moved through the room, introducing Ms. Gloria to everyone with pride and affection. Most guests were warm and welcoming, though a few of Vanessa's closer friends were noticeably cool, their smiles not reaching their eyes. Among the most uncomfortable were Harold and Margaret Henderson, who had witnessed Ms. Gloria's humiliation the night before. Mr. Caldwell, Harold began awkwardly when Robert approached their table. About last night. Water under the bridge. Harold, Robert cut him off smoothly. Though I do hope tonight gives you a different perspective on what really matters. The evening progressed with dinner, a menu that now included both gourmet offerings and the comfort food Robert had insisted on, served with equal elegance. Fried chicken on fine china, collard greens in silver serving dishes, and macaroni and cheese that had several guests asking for the recipe. As the meal concluded, Robert rose and clinked his glass for attention. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him. 40 years, he began. 4 decades of life. It's a time for reflection, for looking back at where you've been and forward to where you're going. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on Miss Gloria. When I look back, I see a little boy from the South Side, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. I see a woman, not my mother, but just as important, who made sure that boy had hot meals, clean clothes, and someone to teach him right from wrong when his mother couldn't be there. Miss Gloria dabbed at her eyes with a napkin as Robert continued. That woman is here tonight. Ms. Gloria Johnson. She didn't just watch over me. She shaped me. She taught me that true worth isn't measured by bank accounts or business success, but by how you treat others, especially those who can do nothing for you in return. Robert stepped away from his table, moving to the center of the room where everyone could see him clearly. Somewhere along the way, I forgot those lessons. I became someone who valued status over substance, who surrounded himself with people who measured worth by wealth and connections. I built a life that looked impressive from the outside but felt hollow within. A murmur ran through the crowd. This raw honesty was unexpected, especially from someone of Robert's status. Recent events have reminded me of who I really am, or at least, who I want to be, Robert continued. And tonight, I want to publicly acknowledge the debt I owe to the woman who helped raise me, and announce how I intend to honor that debt. He gestured for Miss Gloria to join him. After a moment's hesitation, she rose and walked to his side, her head held high despite the tears shining in her eyes. Ms. Gloria, Robert said, turning to face her directly, when my mother faced a health crisis that our insurance wouldn't fully cover, you gave her your life savings, money you'd been setting aside for years to buy your own home. You never asked for recognition or repayment. You did it because you considered us family. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. Miss Gloria looked down, uncomfortable with the attention but standing tall nevertheless. Today, Robert announced, his voice carrying clearly through the now silent room, I'm establishing the Gloria Johnson Foundation for Caregivers, with an initial endowment of $10 million. The room erupted in applause, but Robert held up his hand for silence. The foundation will provide education grants, housing assistance, and healthcare support to domestic workers and caregivers, the often invisible people who make all other work possible by caring for our children, our elderly, our homes. More applause, louder this time. But that's not all. Robert continued once the room quieted again. Ms. Gloria once sacrificed her dream of homeownership to help my family. Today, I'm giving her the deed to my home in Hilltop Estates, along with a trust to maintain it for as long as she wishes. This announcement was met with audible gasps and wide eyes. The Caldwell mansion was one of the most valuable private residences in the city, worth well over $12 million. Robert, Ms. Gloria whispered, you don't have to do this. I want to, he whispered back before addressing the crowd again. Some of you may be wondering about my wife, Vanessa, he said, his tone shifting slightly. She won't be joining us tonight. In fact, we are in the process of separating. The room fell so silent that the clink of a fork against a plate sounded like a cymbal crash. I won't go into details out of respect for privacy, Robert continued diplomatically, but I will say this. Last night, I was forced to choose between the values I was raised with and a lifestyle that required me to compromise those values. It was the easiest choice I've ever made. He turned back to Ms. Gloria, taking her hands in his. Ms. Gloria, thank you for never giving up on that little boy you helped raise. Thank you for showing me the way back to who I'm supposed to be. To everyone's surprise, Robert then knelt before Miss Gloria, like a knight before a queen. Will you accept these gifts, not just for yourself, but as a symbol of recognition for all the women like you who give so much and ask for so little in return? Miss Gloria, overcome with emotion, could only nod, tears streaming down her face. Robert stood and embraced her as the room erupted in applause. Genuine this time. Not the polite society applause of obligation, but the heartfelt response to witnessing something truly meaningful. As the clapping subsided, a commotion at the entrance to the ballroom caught everyone's attention. Vanessa Caldwell stood in the doorway, dressed impeccably in a designer gown, her face a mask of cold fury. "How touching," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she strode into the room. "My husband, the great philanthropist, giving away our home to the help. I wonder if all of you applauding know what this really is." Robert stepped protectively in front of Miss Gloria. "Vanessa, this isn't the place." "Oh, I think it's exactly the place," Vanessa countered, looking around at the gathered guests. "You've made quite a spectacle of our private business, after all." She turned to address the room. "What my husband hasn't told you is that our prenuptial agreement includes a morality clause, one that he's trying to invoke to avoid a fair settlement. This whole performance is nothing but a PR stunt to make me look bad and him look generous." Robert didn't flinch. "Is that what your lawyer told you? Because mine advised me that your behavior last night, witnessed by dozens of people, was more than sufficient to trigger the clause. But that's not why I'm doing this." "No," Vanessa challenged. "Then why the rush? Why announce all this before our divorce is even filed?" "Because it's my birthday," Robert replied simply. "And for the first time in years, I know exactly what I want my life to stand for going forward." Vanessa laughed, a brittle sound. "How convenient that your moral awakening aligns perfectly with keeping your fortune intact." Ms. Gloria, who had remained silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke up. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said, her voice firm despite her tears, "I don't know anything about your legal agreements. But I do know Robert. The little boy I helped raise had a good heart long before he had money. And that heart is still there, no matter how you try to twist his actions." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Stay out of this, old woman. This doesn't concern you." "Actually," Robert interjected, "it concerns Ms. Gloria directly. And since this is my birthday celebration and you weren't invited, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." He nodded to Marcus, who had approached with the hotel security team. Vanessa looked around, suddenly aware that the room's sympathy lay entirely with Robert and Miss Gloria. Her face flushed with humiliation. "This isn't over," she hissed as security approached. "You'll be hearing from my lawyers." "I look forward to it," Robert replied calmly. "And Vanessa? The morality clause works both ways. You're seen here tonight, on top of last night's behavior. Well, let's just say my attorneys will be in touch about what that means for your settlement." As Vanessa was escorted from the ballroom, a collective breath seemed to be released. Robert turned back to the stunned guests. "I apologize for that interruption," he said with remarkable composure. "Now, where were we? Ah, yes, celebrating." He raised his glass high. "To Ms. Gloria Johnson, the woman who taught me that true wealth has nothing to do with money and everything to do with how we treat each other. May her foundation help thousands of caregivers get the recognition and support they deserve." To Ms. Gloria, the crowd echoed, glasses raised. As the jazz quartet resumed playing and the tension dissolved into renewed celebration, Robert leaned close to Ms. Gloria. "I'm sorry about that," he said quietly. "Are you okay?" Ms. Gloria smiled through her tears. "I'm more than okay, little man. I'm proud. So proud of the man you've become, again." Around them, the party continued, but something fundamental had shifted in the atmosphere. Guests who had previously been cool to Ms. Gloria now approached to introduce themselves properly. Business associates who had never shown interest in anything but profit margins were asking about volunteering opportunities with the new foundation. Even the Hendersons, after witnessing Vanessa's behavior, came to offer awkward but seemingly genuine congratulations to Ms. Gloria. As Robert looked around the room, he felt a sense of rightness that had been missing for too long. He had finally found his way back to the path Ms. Gloria had set him on all those years ago, the path of integrity, compassion, and remembering what truly matters. And for a 40th birthday gift, that was worth more than all the wealth in the world. The days following Robert's birthday gala were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. News of his grand gesture spread quickly through both social and traditional media. Local newspapers ran headlines like Tech Millionaire honors former nanny with foundation and mansion, and Caldwell divorce rumors swirl after birthday gala drama. Robert, however, paid little attention to the publicity. He was focused on helping Ms. Gloria transition into her new role, not just as the owner of a palatial estate, but as the inspiration and figurehead for a multi-million-dollar foundation. 1 week after the gala, Robert arrived at his former mansion, now Ms. Gloria's home, for breakfast. He found her sitting in the sunroom, surrounded by papers and looking slightly overwhelmed. "Good morning," he greeted her cheerfully. "How's life as a property owner?" Ms. Gloria looked up with a sigh. "Little man, this house has more rooms than I have relatives to fill them. And these foundation papers." She gestured at the documents spread across the table. "I'm a retired nanny, not a CEO." Robert sat down beside her. "You don't have to run everything yourself. That's why we hired Marlene as the foundation director, remember? She has years of nonprofit experience." I know, Miss Gloria nodded. "But if my name's on it, I want to understand what's happening. These people are counting on me." Robert smiled at her determination. At 72, when most people would be content to simply enjoy retirement, Ms. Gloria was studying organizational charts and grant proposal guidelines. "You'll get the hang of it," he assured her. "And you don't have to live here if it's too much. You could sell this place and buy something more comfortable." Ms. Gloria shook her head firmly. "No, I've been thinking about that. This house is too big for one old woman. That's true. But it's perfect for what I have in mind." "Which is?" Robert asked, intrigued. "A home for aging caregivers," Ms. Gloria explained, suddenly animated. "Women, and some men too, who spent their lives taking care of other people's children, other people's parents, other people's homes. Many of them end up with little or no retirement, no property of their own. They deserve a beautiful place for their final years." Robert stared at her in admiration. "Ms. Gloria, that's brilliant." "It just makes sense," she replied modestly. "This house has 8 bedrooms upstairs that are just sitting empty. The staff quarters in the back could be converted into more rooms or maybe apartments for those who want more independence. The garden is perfect for seniors who want to putter around with plants. We could set it up as a program under your foundation," Robert suggested, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Create an endowment to ensure it continues in perpetuity. Hire healthcare workers, maybe partner with local medical schools for geriatric care programs." Ms. Gloria beamed. "See, I knew there was a reason God put us back in each other's path." As they continued brainstorming over breakfast, Robert's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages he ignored. Finally, after the 5th notification in as many minutes, he checked the screen with an apologetic glance at Ms. Gloria. "It's my lawyer," he explained. "Vanessa's team has made their first counteroffer." Ms. Gloria's expression grew concerned. "Is it going to be a problem? The divorce?" Robert shook his head. "The prenup is solid, especially after her behavior at both parties. They're posturing, that's all." He put the phone away. "But enough about that. Tell me more about your vision for this place." By the time Robert left that afternoon, they had sketched out a comprehensive plan for the Gloria Johnson home for caregivers. Ms. Gloria's eyes sparkled with purpose and excitement, an energy that made her seem years younger than when he'd first reconnected with her just weeks ago. Meanwhile, across town in her luxury suite at the Four Seasons, Vanessa Caldwell was holding a very different kind of meeting. Surrounded by 3 high-priced divorce attorneys and a publicist, she was strategizing her next move. "The morality clause is going to be difficult to fight," her lead attorney admitted. "We have multiple witnesses who heard your comments about Ms. Johnson, which could easily be construed as discriminatory." "So what are you saying?" Vanessa demanded. "That I should just accept whatever scraps Robert decides to throw my way?" "Mrs. Caldwell," the publicist interjected smoothly, "we need to consider not just the legal strategy, but also the public narrative. Right now, The story being told in the media casts you as the villain and your husband as the hero. We need to change that perception. How? Vanessa asked, her perfect features arranged in a scowl. He's giving away mansions to black nannies and starting foundations. I can't compete with that level of virtue signaling. The publicist winced at her phrasing. Please don't use that term in public. What we need is to humanize you, show your side of the story. Perhaps a sympathetic interview? We could position you as a woman blindsided by her husband's midlife crisis, concerned about his sudden erratic behavior with the family finances. Vanessa considered this approach. That could work. Paint Robert as unstable, me as the concerned wife. It's worth a try, the lead attorney agreed. But I should warn you, given the public nature of your comments and the morality clause, it's unlikely we'll get much beyond what the prenup specifies. Our goal should be to minimize damage, not expect a windfall. Vanessa's face hardened. I gave that man 5 years of my life. I built his social connections, refined his image, hosted his business dinners. I deserve more than the prenup minimum. The youngest attorney spoke up hesitantly. Mrs. Caldwell, I've reviewed the terms. The minimum is still $3 million and the vacation home in Aspen. Most people would consider that quite generous. Most people aren't married to a man worth $500 million, Vanessa snapped. And most people don't have to watch him give away a $12 million house to the help. The room fell silent at her words, the attorneys exchanging uncomfortable glances. Finally, the publicist spoke again. Mrs. Caldwell, with all due respect, comments like that are exactly what got you into this situation. If you want to salvage both your reputation and your settlement, you need to be more careful with your language, in public and in private. Vanessa glared at her team, but eventually nodded. Fine. Set up the interview. Make me sympathetic. But I want that house in the Hamptons too, not just Aspen. As her legal team departed, Vanessa walked to the window of her suite, staring out at the city skyline. She had underestimated Robert and Ms. Gloria. That wouldn't happen again. 3 months later, the divorce between Robert and Vanessa Caldwell was finalized with surprisingly little drama. Despite her publicist's efforts, Vanessa's sympathy interview had backfired when she made thinly veiled comments about cultural differences and people who don't understand our world. The public reaction had been swift and negative, further strengthening Robert's position. In the end, Vanessa received exactly what the prenuptial agreement entitled her to: $3 million, the vacation home in Aspen, and her personal belongings. She left the city shortly thereafter, reportedly relocating to Los Angeles to focus on her interior design career. Robert, meanwhile, had settled into his new downtown loft, a spacious but modest 3-bedroom with a view of the city park. His life had simplified in ways that surprised even him. He stepped back from day-to-day operations of his company, delegating more to his capable executive team. He traded networking events and status-driven galas for meaningful community involvement, particularly with Ms. Gloria's foundation. 6 months after his fateful birthday, Robert stood in the beautifully landscaped garden of what was now officially the Gloria Johnson home for caregivers. The former Caldwell mansion had been transformed. While retaining its elegant architecture, the interior had been thoughtfully redesigned to accommodate its new purpose, providing a dignified retirement home for domestic workers who had spent their lives caring for others. Today was the grand opening, and the garden was filled with guests. Not the social elite who had once populated Robert's parties, but a diverse crowd of community members, foundation volunteers, and most importantly, the first 12 residents of the home. Women ranging in age from 65 to 88, all former nannies, housekeepers, or caregivers who had often lived in other people's houses but never owned their own. Ms. Gloria, dressed in a vibrant yellow suit that complemented her silver hair, stood at a small podium, addressing the crowd. "Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine standing here today," she began, her voice strong despite her age. "When I took my first job as a nanny at 19 years old, I was just trying to make ends meet. I never saw it as anything special, just doing what needed doing for children who needed care." She paused, looking around at the gathered faces. "But I've come to realize that what we caregivers do is something special indeed. We raise the children who grow up to change the world. We keep the homes that keep families together. We tend to the elderly who built the society we all benefit from. And yet, when our working days are done, too many of us have nowhere to call our own. Ms. Gloria gestured to the magnificent house behind her. This home is changing that, one life at a time. Not just by providing shelter, but by recognizing the dignity and value of caregiving work. By saying to the world that those who care for others deserve care themselves when their time comes. Robert, standing to the side, felt his throat tighten with emotion as he watched Ms. Gloria speak. She had flourished in her new role, her natural warmth and wisdom making her a beloved figure to both the residents and the staff of the home. None of this would be possible without one of my former charges, Ms. Gloria continued, smiling in Robert's direction. A little boy I once knew, who grew into a man who remembered the value of kindness and respect. She beckoned Robert to join her at the podium. Somewhat reluctantly, he had insisted this day be about Ms. Gloria, not him. He stepped forward. Robert Caldwell could have forgotten where he came from, Ms. Gloria said, taking his hand. Many do, when success fills their bank accounts. But he remembered the lessons his mama and I taught him. That true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in how you treat others. Robert leaned toward the microphone. The truth is, I did forget for a while, he admitted to the crowd. I got caught up in a world of status and appearances, surrounding myself with people who valued me for what I had, not who I was. He looked at Miss Gloria with deep affection. It took this remarkable woman coming back into my life to remind me of what really matters. And in doing so, she didn't just change my life. She's changing the lives of everyone this foundation touches. After the ceremony, as guests mingled over refreshments, Robert found himself approached by Marcus and Diana. Quite a transformation, Marcus observed, looking around at what had once been Robert's status symbol mansion. Both the house and you. Robert smiled. Sometimes you have to lose something to find something more valuable. Speaking of finding things, Diana said with a meaningful look at her husband. We have some news. Well, Marcus has news. Marcus grinned. I'm leaving the firm, starting a nonprofit legal center to partner with Ms. Gloria's foundation, offering free legal services to domestic workers facing workplace issues, immigration challenges, housing discrimination, that sort of thing. Marcus, that's fantastic, Robert exclaimed. But what about your partnership track? His friend shrugged. What can I say? You inspired me. Made me realize I was chasing the wrong things too. Diana's practice is doing well enough to support us, and this work will actually make a difference. As they continued talking, Robert noticed a young woman approaching Ms. Gloria timidly. She appeared to be in her early 20s, with warm brown skin and a hesitant smile. Ms. Gloria's face lit up in recognition, and she embraced the young woman warmly. Later, Ms. Gloria brought the young woman over to meet Robert. Robert, this is Zoe Collins, Ms. Gloria introduced them. My grandniece Tanya's oldest daughter. She just graduated from Howard University with a degree in social work. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Caldwell, Zoe said, shaking his hand. Aunt Gloria has told me so much about you. All good things, I hope, Robert replied with a smile. The best, Zoe assured him. What you've done here, it means so much to our family. Not just the foundation and this home, but the way you've honored Aunt Gloria's work. Ms. Gloria beamed proudly. Zoe has accepted a position with the foundation. She'll be coordinating our education grant program for children of domestic workers. We couldn't ask for anyone better, Robert said sincerely. Someone who understands firsthand the value of this work. As the day wound down and guests began to depart, Robert found Ms. Gloria sitting alone on a bench in a quiet corner of the garden, looking tired but deeply content. You should rest, he said, joining her. It's been a big day. I'll rest when I'm dead, Ms. Gloria replied with a chuckle. And not a moment before. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Did you ever imagine this? Robert asked eventually. When you were taking care of that little boy in the apartment on the south side? Ms. Gloria considered the question. I always knew you were destined for something special, little man. Not the money or the success, though I'm not surprised by that either. But this. She gestured toward the house and garden. This goodness in you. I always saw it, even when you were small. Even when I lost my way? Robert asked softly. You never lost it completely, Miss Gloria assured him. It was always there, just waiting for the right moment to shine again. Robert took her hand gently. Thank you for coming back into my life. For helping me remember who I really am. Oh, I don't think it was an accident, Miss Gloria said with the quiet wisdom that had guided Robert throughout his childhood. Some connections are meant to be, even when they seem broken. Some lessons need to be taught more than once. As darkness fell and lights came on in the windows of the house, now home to women who had spent decades making other people's houses into homes, Robert reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. He had lost a marriage built on shallow values and surface appearances. He had stepped back from a business world that often prized wealth over worth. He had simplified his life in many ways. And yet, he had never felt richer. The following Sunday, Robert drove Ms. Gloria to visit his mother's grave. It was a ritual they had begun shortly after his birthday, a monthly pilgrimage to pay respects and maintain connection with the woman who had worked so hard to give her son opportunities she never had. As they placed fresh flowers on the simple headstone, Miss Gloria spoke softly. She would be so proud, Alice, she said, addressing Robert's mother as if she could hear. Your boy has become everything you hoped for. Robert knelt beside the grave, tracing his mother's name with his finger. I wish she could see what we've built, Miss Gloria. The foundation, the home, all of it. She sees, Miss Gloria assured him. Some way, somehow, she sees. They stood together in the peaceful cemetery, an elderly black woman who had once been paid to care for a white child, and the successful man that child had become. Their relationship defied simple categorization, not exactly family by blood or law, but bound by something just as powerful, mutual respect, shared values, and a love that transcended conventional boundaries. As they walked back to the car, a text message came through on Robert's phone. It was from Zoe, with exciting news. The Foundation's education grants had just been approved for 10 recipients, children of domestic workers who would be the first in their families to attend college. Ms. Gloria, Robert said, showing her the message. It's really happening. We're making a difference. Ms. Gloria smiled, but didn't look surprised. Of course we are, little man. That's what happens when privilege meets purpose, when wealth is used for what really matters. And what's that? Robert asked, though he already knew the answer. Lifting others up, Miss Gloria replied simply, recognizing that we're all connected, all worthy of dignity and respect. No matter what work we do, what color our skin is, or how much money we have in the bank. As they drove away from the cemetery, Robert realized that his 40th year, which had begun in wealth but emptiness, had become a year of rediscovery and purpose. The journey hadn't been easy. It had cost him a marriage and challenged many of his assumptions about success. But what he had gained was immeasurably more valuable: authenticity, purpose, and the knowledge that he was using his resources to create lasting good. In the months and years that followed, the Gloria Johnson Foundation grew to become a nationally recognized advocate for domestic workers' rights and support. The home for caregivers expanded to additional locations in 3 other cities. Robert remained involved but deliberately kept himself in the background, ensuring that Ms. Gloria and the women the foundation served remained the focus. Vanessa, meanwhile, attempted to reinvent herself in Los Angeles, but struggled to find the same level of social status she had enjoyed as Robert's wife. Occasionally, Robert would see her name mentioned in society columns or glimpse her photo at some celebrity event, but those moments grew increasingly rare and held no emotional significance for him. Miss Gloria lived another 7 wonderful years, passing peacefully in her sleep at age 79. By then, the foundation had helped hundreds of domestic workers secure better wages, housing, and education for their children. The Home for Caregivers had become a model program, studied and replicated nationally. At her funeral, attended by hundreds including many prominent community leaders and advocates, Robert delivered a eulogy that captured the essence of what Ms. Gloria had taught him. "Some people change your life by teaching you what to value," he said, his voice thick with emotion but strong. "Others change it by showing you who to be." Ms. Gloria did both. She taught me that true success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you give. She showed me that real power isn't the ability to make people serve you, but the courage to serve others. He looked out at the diverse crowd, wealthy donors sitting alongside the domestic workers the foundation supported, community activists beside business leaders, all united in their respect for the woman being honored. Ms. Gloria often said that we're all connected, all worthy of dignity no matter what work we do or where we come from. Her life proved that wisdom. Her legacy ensures that truth will continue to change lives for generations to come. As the service concluded and mourners filed out of the church, a young woman approached Robert, one of the first education grant recipients, now a graduate with a teaching degree. "Mr. Caldwell," she said earnestly, "I just wanted you to know, I tell my students about Ms. Gloria all the time, about how she helped raise a boy who grew up to change so many lives." Robert smiled through his tears. That's her real legacy. Not the foundation or the buildings with her name, but the ripples of kindness spreading outward, touching life after life. "She changed everything for me," the young woman agreed. "And now I get to change things for my students." "That's how it works," Robert nodded. "That's how real change happens. One life touching another, and then another." As he walked to his car after the service, Robert looked up at the clear blue sky and whispered words meant for two women who had shaped his life, his mother and Ms. Gloria. "I remember," he said softly. "Every day, I remember." And in the work, he continued, in the lives transformed by the foundation, in the dignity restored to those whose work had too long been undervalued, Robert Caldwell honored that promise. He remembered where he came from. He remembered what truly mattered. And in doing so, he created a legacy of compassion that would outlast all the wealth and status he had once thought so important. Because in the end, as Ms. Gloria had always taught him, our true worth isn't measured by what we have, but by how we treat others on our journey through this world. If this story moved you, please give it a like and consider subscribing. We tell these stories to shine light on truth and hope, and your support helps keep them coming. What did you feel about this journey? Share your thoughts or your own stories in the comments. Your voice matters in our community. Thank you for joining us, and see you in the next video.